There we go. Once again, thank you so much for joining us this evening. We are very pleased to have our March Artist of the Month, Maureen Egan, here with us this evening, and her husband, Tim Seymour. We are going to see something very special. We're going to see a film that inspired the beautiful artwork that we are exhibiting this month online, virtually. From a hiking adventure that they went on in Wyoming. And I've seen the film. It is so beautiful, and I am so excited that we can all share it tonight. Let's tell you a little bit about Maureen. So Maureen is an artist and an author and an elder caregiver and just an all-around awesome person. And you can find out more about Maureen this evening, and of course, by visiting her website, eganart.com. I want to mention that Maureen's been kind enough to donate 20% of all the artwork sold on her website during the month of March to the Camden Public Library, and we really appreciate that support. So she has prints, she has paintings, she has note cards. Be sure to check out eganart.com. And her husband, Tim Seymour, is also here with us this evening. And Tim is a graduate of the National Outdoor Leadership School. He's a trained photographer and a graphic artist. And he actually took up filmmaking in the year 2015, so not that long ago. And that was in order to document a hike he went on the John Muir Trail in California. And the film from that premiered at the Camden Public Library a little over 5 years ago to a packed house. And I really wish we were all there this evening enjoying this film together, but I'm so glad that you've come out tonight to enjoy it together virtually. One more time, I just want to go over how the evening is going to go. We're going to see a pre-recorded 4-minute art talk by Maureen, and that will immediately lead into this evening's film, which runs about 36 minutes long. Right after that, we'll bring it back to the screen, and we will have some questions and answers for Maureen and Tim through the chat box. I highly recommend putting your screen in speaker view when we return to the end of the program, so that you can see Tim and Maureen instead of a million little faces on the screen. All right, here we go. I am so pleased to welcome Tim Seymour and Maureen Egan this evening. Tim, you are welcome to go ahead and start the film.
Before beginning a painting, I prepare to take a journey, one that will blur the real with the imagined. I start with a sense of the story I want to tell, then gather images that resonate. Along with the paint, I layer ideas, memories, imagery, and most of all, color. I focus my attention and feeling, responding intuitively as I proceed. The work and I form a kind of relationship, and if I listen well, it returns more than I give. My life and my art took a turn a few years ago, precipitated by my first ever hike in Wyoming's wilderness. The trip brought intense emotional extremes that, once home, still hummed. But with distance came perspective. Bringing difficult scenes into focus allowed me to recast them in a kinder light. Turning an angst-filled night into a scene like this was like having a superpower that let me find beauty in the darkest place. And here, on our last morning, when I stood stroking my wounds, then vowed to put my sincerest effort forward, some of the Wyoming paintings came straight from photographs we took on the trip, which was a return for me to a more representational style. In these cases, I learned new painting techniques around form, perspective, and color, I got a lot of practice painting mountains. I love to layer colors into a harmonious whole, including subtle, unexpected shades. And most of all, I'm a storyteller, utilizing all the artist's tools to make an image that sparks an inner response. To recognize that radiant, peaceful resonance that rises when we take time to cultivate it. After 2 trips and 2 years of painting the Wyoming wilderness, I felt drawn to explore a new medium. With my husband, I spent last year making a film about our 2019 journey into the Wind River Range. And now I'm back in the studio, creating colorful new stories, which I look forward to sharing in person next year. In 2017, my husband Tim invited me and our 2 grown kids on a hike in the Wind River Range in Wyoming. The idea was to celebrate his 60th birthday by being together in the wilderness for the total solar eclipse that was due to cross the U.S. on August 21st. It would be my first wilderness hike at the age of 56, and I didn't exactly feel up to the challenge, especially compared to my very capable husband and children. But what was I going to do? Miss it? The trip brought its highs and lows. That's another story. But experiencing the eclipse with my family made it all worthwhile. Even so, when we finished the hike, I had no desire to do another. A year passed, during which I wrote about and made paintings of our hike. The more I processed the hard parts of the hike, the more I felt called to try again. I asked Tim if he would lead me and a few friends on a route that would follow the Green River all the way to its source. Without hesitation, he agreed to take us to the winds that following August, 2019. The women I invited were friends of over 20 years, gals I regularly hiked with around the Camden Hills in Maine where we live, educators whose appreciation of the natural world mirrored my own. We entered at the Green River Lakes trailhead, the same launching point we took for our eclipse hike. Our plan was to follow the Green River to its source, a basin east of Peak Lake, about 20 miles into the range. I had asked Tim to craft a route that allowed for breaks, to observe a scene, to take a rest, or to photograph or write. Tim obliged by laying down a 50-mile loop spread over 8 days that factored in a couple of half-day stops for day hikes or rest. We started in mid-afternoon under fair skies and along green grass, still moist from rains so recent the puddles had yet to soak into the trail. pockets of fireweed, lupin, cow parsley, sago lily, and dozens of other wildflowers sprung like fairies in the soft shade of the rocks and pines. That first day was like walking into Oz as we followed the Green River lakes, then the river itself, toward Square Top Mountain, the unmistakable landmark that beckoned us forward. The water, made emerald from glacial sediment that filters down from its source high in the range, whispered an ancient, otherworldly language that both soothed and excited me. We walked for 6 miles, stopping near dusk to make camp. No sooner had we laid down our packs, the prerequisite 200 feet from the river, than the mosquitoes descended, chasing us from the river to a somewhat less infested spot on the other side of the trail. I had learned from the last hike that sleep does not come easily to me on the trail, whether from altitude, or tight quarters, or thoughts of the coming days. This time I was prepared with a Benadryl for each night, which I was told would encourage a better sleep. Sure enough, I only rose once in the night, compared with the 1 hour of sleep I had had on our first night last time around. I was off to a good start. I woke at 6:30 to Tim's whisper outside our tent. He had risen in order to make a time-lapse of the morning light and had discovered 2 bull moose grazing alongside the river. We quickly roused the others to join us. When the moose noticed us, they broke into a gallop, then crossed the river, the smaller one kicking his legs in the air and splashing water as if in play. Next came armies of mosquitoes. Like a band of misfits, we suited up with netting and long sleeves for protection. Volunteering to be the leader that day, I strapped on a can of bear spray and started off, setting my pace to the song, "By the Rivers of Babylon," its rhythm syncing with the gurgling, rippling water by our side. My inner soundtrack paused for only 3 reasons: to admire a flower, to stop for a snack, or to cross a stream, all which we did on a regular basis. The air was hot, and we were glad for the occasional shade offered by clusters of lodgepole pine. Elfie, who grew up in Colorado, told us how much she loved the smell of them. I asked her what they smelled like, and she said, vanilla. This led to a lot of tree sniffing until we decided that the sap smelled both of vanilla and resin, and was decidedly more sweet than pungent. Throughout the day, when a warm waft of air blew the lodgepole branches, it carried with it that sweetly resonant scent. Our 8-mile hike that day ended with a 1,000-foot elevation gain and one last stream crossing in late afternoon. A short while later, we arrived at our home for the night, a pleasant grassy glade encircled by evergreens, not far from a rushing stream. The next morning, our 3rd day, we pulled on our trail runners, still damp from the previous day's stream crossing. After breakfast and chores, we broke camp and headed out. The trail led us up a gradual incline through a forest dotted with pines and wildflowers. We stopped frequently to snack, hydrate, and take in the views, which opened dramatically once we hit 10,000 feet. I felt like a long-distance runner, cheered on by the floral bystanders, dressed in garments of scarlet, azure, lemon, and cloud. At our lunch stop, Tim shared tips for what he thought would be the biggest challenge of our entire trip: climbing Cube Rock Pass. There's not much of a trail once we reach the talus field, he said, so you'll be scrambling up boulders instead. I suggest using your hands rather than your poles, since they will give you more control. When we get higher, I expect there will be some snow, but nothing we Mainers can't handle. Take your time. Partway up, I put away my poles and relied on all 4 limbs for stability and balance. I moved steadily, adrenaline resurrecting the scrappy, tree-climbing kid I once was. And those rocks. Geometric striations, speckles of black, gray, white, chartreuse, and tan, all in mesmerizing variation, and offset by patches of flowers tucked here and there along the way. Tim kept watch on the isolated clouds that gathered as we climbed, their thunder rumbling in the distance. A light rain began, dabbing our cheeks and fingers with refreshing moisture. As we neared the crest of the pass, Tim didn't want to take any chances, so we found cover under large boulders while we waited for the storm to pass. Still pumped with energy, I found this thrilling at first. But as 5 minutes turned to 20, my warmth and confidence drained like a tire with a slow leak. As we started out again, I felt tentative and shaky, and when we reached the first snowfield, I had to summon my strength. As Tim had instructed, though, I took my time and was grateful for its short length. After we crested the pass, I layered up and snacked, but still couldn't shake the weakness or chill. Thankfully, the rest of the hike was a gradual downhill toward Peak Lake. We found a campsite nestled between rocks and dwarf conifers near the lake. I slid off my pack and collapsed to the ground, unable to muster the energy to move. Elfie brought me a vitamin C drink and covered me with her down jacket before heading off to explore. I fell into a dazed sleep, aware only of a steady chirping above my head. Eventually, I translated the song to "Chin up, cheer up," advice that lifted me back to my feet to join the others in their exploration. By dusk, new storm clouds gathered, and a sudden wind rose, bringing thunder and lightning once again. Tim and I made dinner in our wind-sheltered vestibule, and I delivered it to the others in between rain showers to be eaten in their tents. We fell asleep by 8 p.m. to the heavy pattering of rain. Day 4. We woke early, grateful for a clear sky. The air was crisp, but not as cold or as buggy as it had been in the Green River Valley. This was our day to experience the midpoint of our journey, the basin at the source of the Green River. Tim had planned a free morning for this, with only a mile to travel each way, carrying lightweight day packs. Esperanza chose to explore the area near camp on her own. We made our way along the lake, then meandered through alpine meadows that led gradually up the basin. Water streamed down the hillside and along the trail. Sometimes just underneath the grass, and sometimes hidden well below the ground. Low shrubs and wildflowers sprayed the hillsides with flourishes of bright color. And the smell of sky pilot, remarkably like cannabis, filled the air wherever it bloomed. By late morning, we reluctantly turned back. Spilling with happiness, I turned to Tim to tearfully thank him for being our guide. The color of the lake as we approached at high noon, a combination of turquoise, aqua, and teal, completed my conversion as a worshipper of that high holy place. We returned to find Esperanza beaming from her quiet, meditative morning. We shared lunch, broke camp, and headed up the not-so-intimidating Shannon Pass, stealing glances back at the lake at every opportunity. The elevation gain was roughly 600 feet on a well-maintained trail flanked by talus. Halfway up the pass, we came upon an oasis that stopped us in our tracks. Amidst a mountainside of gray granite, there was a small garden of primrose and moss, a microclimate created by the shade and the streams that trickled through the rocks. Once over the pass, we traveled along a high plateau populated by a magnificent assortment of glacial erratics. one spot in particular emanated an ancient, sacred stillness, and I wondered if it had once been a ceremonial gathering place for the natives of this land. We felt strong that afternoon and hiked until the sun started to set, making camp near a pond in a grove of pine perched high over a valley. After dinner, I found a prime spot to witness another canvas made perfect by nature's hand. Morning brought a lovely stillness and peace. Two of us felt low in energy, so we decided to take the morning to putter and play. We jumped in the lake, did laundry, stretched, and took our time exploring. We left at noon, and the trail was good to us. We focused on staying hydrated, which kept up our energy as we made our way to the crossroads near Summit Lake, a fine stopping place for lunch and bird watching. We made steady progress all afternoon on fairly level trails along an alpine plateau. We stopped at 5 o'clock at a convergence of lake and stream, making camp in a dell near the water, with no wind to either bother us or quell the squads of mosquitoes that lived there. Our sixth day brought fair skies once again. We hiked all morning through a wide subalpine meadow flanked by granite mountains and populated by a profusion of wildflowers. By late morning, the trail began its descent, and we were soon snaking down a series of switchbacks through the forest, harder on the legs than the lungs. The rushing, frigid river quieted our crying hot feet during lunch. After our rest and refuel, we started up the other side of the canyon. Those of us with cranky downhill knees were ready for the change of slope. Clouds thickened as we climbed, so we decided to stop when Tim spotted a good campsite in the waning afternoon. We set up a tarp and tents on a bluff overlooking a canyon that narrowed on one side where the stream rushed far below. No sooner had we made camp than the rain came. We scurried to our tents and spent the next 2 hours reading and journaling, a lovely leisure time after the long uphill climb. We ate under the tarp, and shortly after dinner, Elfie noticed a swath of sunlight washing over the distant mountains. I joked that there would soon be a rainbow. 2 minutes later, I turned my head, and there it was, a perfect double rainbow, embracing the canyon and us with its light. We woke early to mostly clear skies, still feeling those rainbow highs. We made good time on the 2-mile uphill climb that began in a dense grove and led to a series of pocket meadows. Clouds can accumulate quickly at such high elevations, and Tim kept us moving as he watched the skies darken, hoping to get us over the pass and safer from the danger of lightning. After a quick round of high fives at the height of the pass, he pointed us to the downward slope. A snaking trail on the steep, exposed mountainside. The clouds thickened after our descent. Knowing that rain was imminent, we found a cluster of trees to shelter us during our lunch break. We discovered old claw marks on one tree, which was the closest we ever got to a bear sighting on the hike. We pulled on our rain gear and set off just as the drops began. What started as a gentle drizzle grew into a steady rain that proved the worthiness of our rain gear, soaking only our hands and feet. Distracted by the sculptural forms of boulders, mosses, dead trees, and the discovery of new wildflower species, we pressed on for over an hour. By 4 o'clock, I was growing cold and asked if we could make camp soon. Tim instructed us to be on the lookout for a campsite, but none came. We stopped to snack in a clump of evergreens, and I positioned myself under the thickest branches for protection from the dripping cold rain. Tim set off ahead to search for a campsite, while ever-cheerful Elfie taught us the reggae version of the Rivers of Babylon. Tim returned unsuccessful, so we had no choice but to press on. We went for another 45 minutes in steady rain, then crossed a wide stream that soaked our feet to the bone in frigid water. We finally came to a campsite, but it was already occupied. Running on fumes, I gave Tim a pleading look, and he approached the group, who were gracious about letting us share. He quickly set up our tent and instructed me to climb out of my wet clothes and into my dry sleeping bag, which over the next 30 minutes warmed me back to a normal temperature. The rain let up by 7, so we gathered under our tarp for dinner, watching the clouds as they broke up, feeling the air grow raw. By now I had convinced all of the women to take a Benadryl for better rest, and that night we all slept soundly. I woke slowly on our 8th and final morning. I felt rested, but my lower back was sore, and I was beginning to long for the comforts of home, especially fresh vegetables and hot water. This hike was the perfect length, I told Tim, thanking him again for all of his planning. We hung our wet socks in the cold, sunny air and collected our own dose of sun, too. By 10:30, we were on the trail, which led us through the woods, alongside bursting streams that raced downhill toward the Green River Lakes. After its initial descent, the trail leveled off, and we traveled comfortably, the sweet, piney wafts of lodgepole brushing past our cheeks, the emerald lake glistening in the afternoon sun. We shared our last lunch, already feeling the sweet tugs of nostalgia. As if manifesting our gratitude, a series of checkered skippers fluttered among the aspen daisies that clustered in sunny patches along the trail. At the edge of the woods, near the very end of our hike, a friendly sparrow sat sentinel in the branches of a pine, as if to bid us good day and good hike.
Hello, thank you guys so much. That was magnificent. I watched it a couple months ago and it was such a pleasure to watch it again. And I'm sure everyone who's here with us tonight feels the same way. How are you guys doing? We're back.
Did it work?
It did work. It did work. And I
Okay,
can
good.
hear you beautifully. So I want to remind everyone, we are now going to have a question and answer session. So if you have something to go ahead and type into the chat box, please do. And I will read the questions aloud to Tim and Maureen. So while we're waiting for some questions to come in, I first of all want to ask you, I love that you brought us into your experience in such a multifaceted way. And I think the big song at the end was kind of a great reminder of what I wanted to ask you about. How did you decide what this experience was going to sound like, what the music was going to be? Because, you know, for all of us who go hiking, there's no soundtrack while we're there. How did you agree upon what the music was going to be like?
Go ahead.
All right. Yeah. Well, what I'll say is that we spend probably 7 or 8 months doing the bulk of the work, and then the last part is like putting frosting on a cake, and that is the music. So there is a site which Tim could tell you the name of that has free music that you can just lift off the internet. Copyright.
Free.
And then our son, who's 32 and just about to become a dad, is a very talented composer. So I was able to twist his arm and get him to write 2 major themes that are repeated through the so the one by the waters of the winds or whatever.
By the
It's like a song, you know. He took
The
a
Waters
song,
of Babylon.
yeah, Waters of Babylon, yeah. So he did the instrumentals for 2, and he could actually see by then the film was all there just without the sound. So he did 2 of the themes, which are each repeated. And then Jamie Oshima, who's a local musician, part of the Oshima brothers, I found a piece that he had done and asked him permission. He said yes. And then everything else came from this free site.
I can't even imagine how much you must have had to listen to all the different pieces to be like,
I
yes,
listened to
this
many
is what it
hours.
was. This is the moment. This is how it felt. That's
But you know, by then you know it so intimately,
Mm.
and you just knew the right vibe. And so that was by far the most wonderful part of the process was the music. It really comes to life with the music.
Yeah, it's splendid. Jennifer wants to know, thank you so much. She says, first of all, when is the next hike? I think she's trying to get an invite.
Well, we're headed back in August.
To the same area?
Yeah, I've been out there every year since 2016. So I did a traverse of the whole range in 2016 with a friend of mine, and we made a movie of that too called Into the Winds, which is on YouTube. And I was there in 1982, and then had kids. So I came back in 2016, actually 2012. So I go back every year, and then we're going back again this year in August.
Tim likes to go on multiple hikes. So he'll do 2 or 3 consecutive hikes with a little day or 2 in between to rest up and refuel.
Wow, that's incredible. Dave actually mentions, he says, it was a nostalgic delight to watch this. I spent 8 weeks in the Wind River Range several decades ago, and he wants to know what specifically is it about that stays with you from your time in Wyoming?
Well, for me, I have some nostalgia from when I went to NOLS, the National Outdoor Leadership School. I was there in 1982, and I spent 6 weeks up in the mountains in the fall of 1982, and it's just sublimely beautiful. I mean, it's so dramatic, the landscape, and I just love it out there. And it's huge too. I mean, it's like 2 million acres, so you can just go anywhere. And there are tons of trails, and I like doing off trail a lot too.
The drama of the destination is certainly, you brought it to life. We're getting so many comments coming in. I'll just give you a sample of them. This was such a beautiful and incredible journey, told in full color and vivid imagery with awesome music. Thank you, such a gift. And then we actually are having a question about identification. Melinda asks, was the large white striated rock white quartz or granite? Or white quartz on granite?
Do you know?
I
have no
I
idea.
don't know. I would like to know. I mean, if they know, I would love to. I would love. There is a lot of granite out there. Most of the rock is granite. So, I mean, I think it's all basaltic out there.
Yes, if anyone has any further information on identifying those rock, go ahead and just type it to the chat and hopefully we'll get that answer. So we have someone who came in late to the program and saw the paintings before the photographs of the place. I loved that experience. Did you do that on purpose? So did you have the work on your paintings from the photographs?
Yes, they can go back and listen to the talk, which we'll talk a little bit about that. But most of the paintings came from a hike that we did in 2017 for Tim's 60th birthday to see the total solar eclipse. And that hike was very, very hard for me. And so the paintings were a way for me to process. I was also writing about it. And then I decided, it surprised me that after making all the paintings, I decided I wanted to go back and try again, but on my terms. Because it was, with his birthday trip, I was trying to be, a sport, and I had a really hard time being a sport. So somebody said about mileage, and I will say, like, my ideal mileage was 4 to 6 miles a day, whereas Tim is more happy with 8 to 12.
Well, not happy,
but when he was designing the trip, I can't tell you how many times he would come and show me the route, and I'd ask my first question, how many miles, and so anyway, my ideal is 4 to 6 miles a day, which is very doable, just a couple hours in the early part of the day and a couple hours later. And I just like to have a lot of time to just sit and stare at the rocks or the views, or
to savor it, basically.
Savor it, yes.
I learned not to tell her how far we were going to go.
So speaking of the trail, Malin says there was a definite trail in many parts, but not through the rocky passes. How did you navigate those areas?
So most of the place, I think every place we were there was a trail, except for up those talus rocky areas. And there's a lot of cairns that people put up, so you can really just look and see where the next cairn is. So it's pretty much a trail, but there are places where it's hard to see any beaten path.
Was it national park land or state park land?
It's national forest and also wilderness area. There's like I think there's so if you've ever seen them, what was the movie with Leonardo DiCaprio where he got attacked by the bear and
oh, I know what you're talking about. And I can't think of the title.
Yeah. Well, anyway, the guy that left him there was Bridger, and it's the Bridger National Forest there. So that's kind of the area that all took place.
Okay, yeah. Somebody says revenants. I'm not sure.
Yes, that's right.
Yeah,
that's
okay.
it. Yeah,
Good.
the Revenant.
Revenant,
Yeah.
yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, Jim said the Titanic. Sorry, Jim.
So yes, and you also, I think, during the film answered the question about bears, because we've had a couple questions come in to see if people saw bears, but you didn't. You saw the scratch marks and things
so
like that.
in the northern part, there's grizzly. It's up near Yellowstone, so it's just southwest of Yellowstone, and the range of the grizzlies do go down that far. But I've been there six times. I've seen bear scat, but I've never seen a bear.
Thank goodness.
Yeah, right.
You
Well,
wanna
I
see
wouldn't
'em-
mind seeing one.
Well, from a distance, you had that wonderful experience with the moose. Yeah. So when it says other wildlife, moose, bison, you did show in the film that you did see
Yeah.
some moose.
And I've seen elk too.
Oh, did you see it?
And you've seen mountain goats.
Yeah,
Somebody asked about mountain
yeah,
goats.
yeah.
And they want to know what month you were there. Someone did a trip to the Wind River in early September and was struck with all the spring flowers. And did you use bear canisters for food?
Yes. We were there in August. Or it was middle of August, and the mosquitoes were horrific in places. The later you go, the better it is for mosquitoes are not as bad. And we did carry bear canisters for food.
But the later you go, the more likely you are to encounter snow,
Ah, yes.
even in August.
Yeah, I got in a little storm last year in August.
Goodness, that's so hard to fathom. But I guess the
Yeah.
altitude, it just happens.
Yeah.
I have a question that's a little bit more about Maureen's artwork that came from this. So these paintings look quite different from a lot of the other work. And again, if for those of you who are interested or who may have missed the beginning of the portion of the program, Maureen's website is eganart.com, and that's EGANART.com. And so it looks a lot different from some of your other work. Can you talk to me a little bit about what made you feel like you needed to learn a new way to paint or new techniques in order to get this vision on the canvas?
Well, it evolved very naturally. I think when I started doing the Wyoming paintings, you remember the one of the trees with the path
Yep.
going? That was the first one that I did. And then I tried to do another one that was more storytelling focused, and it was a complete flop. And then I realized, gosh, I have all these beautiful photographs. Maybe I'll just do a painting that's based more on a photograph. And because I was also writing about the trip, I had published a book a few years before, and I felt like the story of the first hike was a really interesting story. And I think I just needed to kind of chew on it for a long time. So I spent a whole year writing out the entire trip, filled like 3 notebooks. And so eventually I kind of just felt drawn to, because I was telling the story so specifically, to just, make paintings that were more accurately representing the area. So there are a couple of paintings that are a blend of several different photographs, because there wasn't a photograph that kind of told that particular story. But I was making the paintings with that in mind, of like having it accompany the story that I was writing for a book. But then I realized ultimately that the book didn't have quite enough oomph to be published. It just was for myself. I just needed to kind of work through all what had been hard for me. So.
Well, the paintings have plenty of oomph for sure. They're gorgeous and so vivid. And I did want to point out, so we have Maureen, as I mentioned at the top of the program, is our March Artist of the Month. And, we would have loved to have had these paintings on exhibit in the library for people to come and see and get up close to. We have them on our website, and you can find them by visiting librarycamden.org and go to the events calendar in March. There's a link on every single day. I wanted to also mention, so Maureen, if people would like to actually see the paintings in person, what can they do? How can that happen?
Oh, yes. Well, we have a lovely home, and I have a studio right in our home with kind of a gallery wall there. So people are more than welcome to contact me. There's a contact spot on my website, and we could set up an opportunity to come and see the paintings or the prints, see how they look, and don't feel like you're pressured to buy one. But it's a big decision to make, and
Sure,
so it's really important to see them in person.
But if you are,
to be happy
to have people, and again, we have links
yeah.
to Maureen's site. We have
We
her
live in
contact
Rockport, by the
information.
way.
So nearby, which is awesome.
Yeah.
when that's all on librarycamden.org on the page, the landing page for the art show. And I did again want to mention her kindness of donating 20% of the sales from the art show during the month of March to support the Camden Public Library. And that is amazing during this very challenging time. So if you're thinking about getting some artwork, now is a great time. You can support local artists and your local library. We are at 7 o'clock. Wow, that went by really, really fast. So we have the eganart.com up on the in the chat box. Please visit that afterwards. And thank you all so much for coming tonight. And thank you to Tim and Maureen for sharing your adventure with us. That was exactly what I needed right now for sure. And I'm sure a lot of other people are just so inspired by all those beautiful wildflowers and ready for us to get some here too in Maine.
Yeah.
Oh,
thank you so much,
Yeah,
Julia.
thanks everyone.
Thank you.
What
And
a
thanks
ride.
everybody for coming.
That was awesome. All right, folks. See you again soon. Please join us for future programs from the Camden Public Library. Visit librarycamden.org and find out what we've got coming up next. Lots of cool stuff, I promise. All right. Good night, everyone. Bye-bye.
Night.